Still the Place with Laura Layton,
Courtney Thorne-Smith,
and Daphne Zuniga, an iHeartRadio podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Melrose Minute.
You know, there's always too much to talk about, like while we're doing a recap.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's all the stuff that we needed to put into a Melrose Minute. So
well, let's be honest, we could talk all day, which would be annoying for everybody.
Let's face it. So, an hour is enough.
Pretty soon it's going to be a Melrose half hour.
Especially because our husbands don't want to hear us at home, so we have to come here and get it all out. So
My dogs are getting so annoyed. They're like, already talk to the girls.
Talk to the girls. So here we are.
Put it on the pod.
We were just talking about, before we got on, about Sydney. We just watched her second and last episode for this season, but how her outfits were getting crazy, and you had some thoughts about what you were wearing.
No, it's just like, it occurred to me, like the character was so open to whatever, and the wardrobe department was so amazing that they would put whatever on her. And I just got this opportunity to try. But I just remember feeling like I've mentioned this before, I was a brand new actress, right? I'm a girl from Iowa, right? Not the most like edgy, place. And I just remembered like the idea that Sydney could wear all these colorful things and try them on and whatever was just so different than my own experience.
Was it freeing for you? Was it exciting and theatrical?
I loved it. I loved it. And I mean, there was a moment in my own like youth and childhood where I was interested in like trying on, 80s fashion. I mean, who wouldn't, right?
Dayglow,
or like in my
leggings.
Like I was a junior high and like I remember the movie Flashdance, right? Yeah. And so I was a dancer too. So like I was so interested. I'll wear leg warmers to school or whatever, like, as part of my outfit, leg warmers, which I got mercilessly mocked for, right?
Wow.
And so like not really a risk-taking place fashion-wise, Iowa. So it was such an interesting thing to be given this character that could do anything and should be, trying anything and whatever.
Yeah.
But I just remember feeling also the actual voice inside my head going, oh, what are people back home going to think?
Did you get reaction?
I did.
Did you get feedback? Do you remember their
I did.
feedback?
It's sort of hard to remember, but I just remember feeling super insecure about it. Like, what is everyone going to think?
Yeah.
Not only that, the scene that I had to be in bed with my sister's husband, even though it was a dream, it was a nightmare sequence or whatever, but like to have to have done that, I was so insecure. Like, what are people going to think? And I'm going to be judged for this. It was like such a weird thing that I just, watching it again, I was reminded of that feeling. Just starting out in my career going, oh, what are people going to think?
So funny. My background is the absolute opposite of yours. I grew up in the 60s in Berkeley, California, where there were like free boxes on every corner for free clothes, whoever wanted anything. And we shopped at thrift stores, and we had our dress-up box at home, my sister and I. We didn't have a TV, but we would go home and put on things, feather boas or whatever, just to play after school. So when I was doing this show with Denise, I got so excited because it like went with that. You know what I mean? It wasn't crazy. She wasn't crazy out of the top, but in Joe's own way, we'd try things that kind of push the edge. And I just loved going to work because it felt like I was being paid to try stuff out of the dress-up box. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just loved her. She had really cool kind of ethnic, kind of esoteric stuff, Joe.
Really chic, upscale, cool stuff, I thought.
Allison was more conservative because she was a Midwest girl. So I didn't have that sort of super plain dress up. But that's a really fun thing about being an actor, which is getting to play different characters. I did a TV movie once where I played a murdering dairy princess. And that was super fun because that was like costumes, and I had wore a costume for murdering. Yeah, she was like a dairy princess, and she had like that was super fun. But I've often played sort of quote normal people, so my clothes weren't that exciting. So it's fun to get to play
super fun,
dress up. Like you were playing super dress up and wearing these extreme things and getting to. It was the time on the show you could tell that they were experimenting with you. They were letting it get fun and funny and a little more unexpected. Like every time we walked into a scene, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I had that feeling about it. And part of it was the costume. Like you'd walk in, I was like, oh, what's going to happen here?
Yeah, it didn't seem at all like you seemed very open to wearing whatever they wanted to try you in.
I loved it, but I just couldn't shake that little voice in my head that was like,
what are they going to think?
Didn't you think like we came of age in a time when most people had no nudity in their contracts, right? Like, I don't know about you, but since I turned 50, people say nudity required. I'm like, did you think I waited till I was 50 to do nudity?
I know.
Like, what do you think is happening? But it used to be on TV, you were pretty well covered. Now it's so different. But I always, from the time I was 17, I started acting professionally, thought about my kid is going to see this one day. right? I always had that thought. I didn't want anything out there that would embarrass my kid. I'm so grateful now that I have a 17-year-old that I did that. Like there are things that would be embarrassing, but kind of an eye-rolling thing, like nothing that would be horrifying for him to watch that his friends would try to show him. Right?
Yeah.
I hope.
I knew I would never have kids, so I didn't have that problem.
So you got to do whatever you
Put
wanted.
into very horrible, compromising positions.
Sort of
but
freeing,
whatever.
I suppose.
It's freeing. It was like,
But you have siblings, right?
yeah, I have a sister. We're very close. We're only 17 months apart. Wow. I have a half brother who's 20 years younger than I am. So that's different. We didn't grow up together. But, watching your story and us talking about the Jane and Sydney of it all has brought up, my own thoughts with this sister. Now, of course, you don't really compare your real life to Melrose situations. That would be, I hope,
Although your story
unrealistic.
was fascinating when you said what you told us last episode that your sister was actually
showed up.
and then which is crazy
And
that you
started
had
living with me. Yes. And then ended up on Melrose Place as an extra.
I love that.
And 2 other jobs I remembered too, I got her. But at any rate, that aside.
So that is pretty confusing.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to talk about like that kind of dynamic and your relationship with siblings. Why are they tough? Why are they so tough? What would cause and get to the point of not talking, or, it has to do with I look at you and I think automatically, Courtney, I look at you and I think of boundaries, set boundaries. So I'm sure that's part of your answer and it should be. But I don't know. What do you think about?
Well, like siblings are the longest relationship you have in your life, right? Like,
yeah. We don't get to choose them.
Right.
That's interesting.
But they really are the longest relationship you have.
Yeah.
Because, your parents won't always be there but your siblings are more aligned with, how you move through the world and age and stuff.
The kind of the roles you were given as a child, like one was given maybe like I was the older one. I totally assumed I had to protect my younger sister that, and she, I'm sure, felt in my shadow and resisted. I never wanted her to copy me or follow me or go get your own friends and that kind of thing. And I don't have that so much now, but it does kind of rear its head in different ways, even as adults.
Yeah. Well, you do hear people saying like those things, those birth order things are really classic. The oldest child often feels like they had to lead the way and be good and whatever. The next or youngest chooses kind of a different path and plays a different role. Not that they're assigned necessarily, but that it just is natural. It's a natural birth order sort of relationship. And I just hear it all the time that there's these sort of classic relationships. And I have an older sister as well. And so like for the Sydney and Jane relationship, it was easy to imagine being the younger sister because I am the younger sister. And I always looked up to my older sister, and I don't think I ever did anything psycho, but
but you could use that.
It definitely is easy to draw from really real emotions about feeling not as smart or not as good or not as, anything, and wanting to be like your older sister.
Have either of you ever had to deal with like really having where you've had to take time off or really deal with difficult subjects with each other?
I think it's hard not to. And what I was thinking as you guys are talking is, it's you live your life in reference to this person, right? Like my son is an only child. So he's kind of like, he's forging his own path. But we were in reference, and I was thinking about my parents telling me that one of the teachers in kindergarten, my sister's a beautiful visual artist, extraordinary. So is my dad. Saying that in kindergarten, I wouldn't draw because I couldn't draw as well as my sister. It's probably why I'm an actor, right? I'm an actor and a writer.
You choose something else,
draw.
yeah.
I still can't draw. And I think it's just, I just said, well, she's got that. That's hers. Yeah. So could there have been something there? I don't know. But I ended up like acting from a very young age because that was mine.
Yeah.
She sort of claimed it. And that happens with siblings, right? They claim this, so you look over here. And it's fascinating.
Yeah. She's older?
She's older, 2.5 years older.
So she got it first. Like she...
Yeah, and I may not, honestly, I may not have that talent, right? But I will never know because I so early...
You chose a different lane.
And of course I couldn't do it as well as her. She was 2.5 years older, but also maybe I don't have that gift. She's gifted, as is her daughter and as was my dad.
Welcome to My Legacy. I'm Martin Luther King III, and together with my wife, Andrea Waters King, and our dear friends Mark and Craig Kilberger, we explore the personal journeys that shape extraordinary lives.
Each week, we'll sit down with inspiring figures like David Oyelowo, Mel Robbins, Martin Sheen, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and Billy Porter. And their plus one, their ride or die, as they share stories never heard before about their remarkable journey.
Listen to My Legacy on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is My Legacy.
I'm so sick of hearing men talk about women's basketball. If only there were a professional WNBA player with her own podcast I could listen to.
Hey, this is Lexi Brown, WNBA player and professional yapper.
And this is Mariah Rose. You may know me from spilling the tea on Hoops for Hotties on TikTok.
And we've got a new podcast, Full Circle.
Every Wednesday, we're catching you up on what's going on in women's basketball. And not just in the WNBA, but with Athletes Unlimited, Unrivaled, and college basketball.
We've got you with analysis, inside stories, and a little bit of tea. I know you guys have seen a lot of former and current basketball players telling their stories from their point of view, and I just think it's time for the girlies to tap in.
We want to share all of the women's basketball stories that you won't see anywhere else.
Tune in to Full Circle, an iHeart Women's sports production in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Presented by Capital One, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports.
Everyone's forgotten who runs this valley. Time to remind them.
Yellowstone fans, step into the Yellowstone universe.
Our family legacy is this ranch.
And I'll protect it with my life.
Hosted by Bobby Bones, the official Yellowstone podcast takes you deeper into the franchise that's captivated millions worldwide.
Action!
Explore untold behind-the-scenes stories, exclusive cast interviews, and in-depth discussions about the themes and legacy of Yellowstone.
You know, the first studs to settle this valley fighting was all they knew.
Whether you're a longtime fan or new to the ranch,
welcome to the Yellowstone.
Bobby Bones has everything you need to stay connected to the Yellowstone phenomenon.
I look forward to it.
Listen to the official Yellowstone podcast now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's go to work.
I started to live a double life when I was a teenager. Responsible and driven, and wild and out of control. My head is pounding. I'm confused. I don't know why I'm in jail. It's hard to understand what hope is when you're trapped in a cycle of addiction. Addiction took me to the darkest places. I had an AK-47 pointed at my head. But one night, a new door opened, and I made it into the rooms of recovery. The path would have roadblocks and detours, stalls, and relapses. But when I was feeling the most lost, I found hope with community, and I made my way back. This season, join me on my journey through addiction and recovery. A story told in 12 steps. Listen to Crumbs as part of the My Cultura Podcast Network. Available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know, my sister and I, when I was in 7th grade, so she was a couple years younger, we both auditioned for a play, my first play at this school, and I got a part. I was cast as a part. It was HMS Pinafore. Again, it was a musical that I shouldn't have done. I got cast because I was a good young actress. And my sister was up for the lead, another lead in it, but they had to draw straws, and the other blonde girl got it. And so Jennifer didn't, and she got the role of Dick Deadeye.
Oh, my sister's name is Jennifer too. Is your sister's name Jennifer?
My sister's name is Lisa.
Would you change it to Jennifer
She will
just
not.
to keep the thing going?
She will not.
So I've always wondered, like, oh, that poor thing, my poor sister, like she drew the wrong straw. Did that change her destiny?
But her trajectory.
But you know, the thing is, like, even if you have a talent, let's say my sister had a talent, she doesn't have the obsession or tenacity because, as we all know, she came out. And she took acting classes, and I gave her jobs. And she, after a couple of years, was like,
That's enough.
I don't like sitting around waiting. So it takes more than the talent. Like your sister does something with her drawing. Does she do something with her drawing now?
She's still an extraordinary artist. Yeah.
It's not her business, though.
No.
It's interesting.
I like that I can remember both of your sisters' names now. From now on, I won't forget.
Yours is
Lisa.
Lisa.
Well, and she
gonna
told
say
me
Laura.
once, my sister told me once that artists, people who have a visual talent for visual art, see shadows. And I asked my niece about it too. Like, I see things kind of in 2 dimensions. So if I draw a flower, it's a 2-dimensional flower.
Right.
I'm not doing shadows. And she was trying to explain it to me. And I was like, I don't see what you see, or it doesn't translate in my brain the same way. Now, writing does, right? Like I write scenes. So it's all tied up together. I don't know, but I don't think of drawing it. I think of writing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
That's interesting. I do things very, I think it's called kinetically or viscerally, emotionally. Like, this is my language. This is how I process things. This is how, and that's very useful for acting. My sister doesn't. She's very logical. Well, so we'll have these conversations, and they're a little bit like we kind of miscommunicate a little. I'm very proud of how my sister and I have dealt with some difficult. We're very different in some big ways, and we literally just choose to not talk about things that we shouldn't, that we know will cause friction, because we value our love. We value the connection.
That's
because
great.
of what you said. It's the longest relationship. It's my earliest relationship. She's my earliest ally. We're your little babies trying to figure out this world together. And I don't want that to be destroyed by opinions that exist now. you
Yeah,
know?
that's great.
So I think it's very important for if you can skillfully kind of navigate that.
Yeah. Yay for sisters.
I can't wait till you come back on the show. I'm very sad we have to take these episodes off, but
we have so many fun
we'll see
episodes
Sydney
coming
back
up
soon.
Yeah, there's lots
Heather's
coming up.
on soon, guys.
Which is so
Heather's
exciting.
coming,
I'm so
making
excited to see
her entrance.
Such fun
Amanda.
stuff coming up.
So excited. To
All right.
So here's our fan question. Watching a 1992 episode of The Young and the Restless, there was a Depp styling gel commercial, and the woman looked like Laura Layton. Does she remember this?
There's a reason she may have looked like me. It was me, actually, in 1992. So I've said, Melrose was my first job. It was like my first acting job. But this Depp commercial was my first actual job on camera. And I was hired for this hair gel. And I got to the set for my very first job, my very first commercial. And I remember I showed up and there was all this conversation around me and everybody's just sort of looking at me and they're kind of getting me set up, maybe go to wardrobe or maybe you go to the hair trailer and maybe you get started, whatever. But there was this conversation and I realized that they were discussing my hair color and that it didn't look the color that they were expecting as it had in my audition. And apparently they had hired a blonde, a redhead, and a brunette for all different parts of this commercial or maybe different versions of the commercial. And I'd been hired as the redhead, but showing up on the set that morning, they didn't think my hair looked red
enough.
And it had in the commercial. They'd hired me as the redhead. And so
Had
there
you
was all this-
changed your hair at all?
I had not changed my hair.
Huh.
And so there's all this sort of conversation, behind whatever was going on. And then they finally just decided to proceed. And once they put me on the set with the lights and everything, I was like, oh, looks red. So it was
With the
apparently
lights.
a lighting thing or whatever. But after that commercial, I was like, whew, I didn't lose the job, for not being redhead enough. But I did right after that decide, okay, I actually need to commit to being a redhead. I'd never really identified as a redhead. And
Really?
I just kind of had I felt maybe sort of hair. I have a lot of redhead in my family, but my own hair, I just felt was kind of kind of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and kind of nothing or whatever. But after that commercial experience where I almost lost a job for not being red enough, I was like, well, that's it. I'm going to be a redhead. And I started, coloring my hair. And
So wait a
committing to being
second. Were
redhead.
you as red as you were when you showed up on Melrose?
So Melrose was after the Depp commercial. So by then I was fully redhead person
You
and going,
committed
"This is-
more."
I'm going to make sure that's, clear. I don't want to be
You were.
something or other and not really one thing or another.
It's
I
so
just kinda
perfect
went
with
the
your
redhead.
skin tone. I can't imagine you with another color.
Well, and kind of neither
I
can
can't
I.
either.
And it's not it was definitely in my family. My sister had beautiful auburn hair and my grandfather's nickname honestly was Red. He was the guy that everybody called Red. Hey, Red.
That's so Iowan.
So it was yeah. So it wasn't not a thing. I just felt mine was very meh,
Great.
Remember Depp? They probably still have it. Remember how heavy it was?
Yeah.
Super sticky.
I know.
Like I don't know if
So
they still
heavy.
have it.
Used to be so heavy, didn't they?
Super sticky.
Like just all the product, the sprays, Aquanet, everything was
That's
so
still
heavy.
around. I think
Yeah.
Aquanet's still around.
Yeah.
I remember when I really committed, when my hair, when I was young, it was super blonde. And then it started to get darker. And when I was first working, I would just use sun-in. And I would just put the
Oh my
sun-in on
God,
and then
sun-in.
a hot blow dryer. And that was my
70s.
fancy hair coloring technique.
I
We all
remember
tried that.
sun-in.
It's a lot
Maybe
cheaper
little
than what I
yellowy,
spend now.
orangey, yeah. Or like
Yeah.
lemon juice just sitting out in the sun.
You never knew what you were going to get.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
It's kind of apricot color.
You know what reminds me of like junior high is sun-in, Bain de Soleil,
Yes.
and
Baby oil.
Johnson's baby oil.
Yes.
so
And we'd
good.
lie out all summer and get like,
Yeah. Just try to fry ourselves in oil.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh
stupid.
God. So dumb. All right. We'll do some more questions on our next Melrose Minute.
And at some point, we don't have time now, but I want to know if you guys remember when the cast did a Pantene commercial. L'Oreal.
Yeah, I remember L'Oreal.
We all did it. That was when they could hire the whole cast to do an ad campaign.
I remember you and Billy, you and Andrew doing a campaign. I don't know if Grant and I did one. Or
I think we all did it.
Did we?
I didn't do
I
the
think we
L'Oreal because I
all did
wasn't
it.
in first season.
Mm.
I did
Right.
a Cheetos commercial later with or Doritos, I think.
As a
later
part
in
of
the
Melrose Place, like a cross
yeah,
branding?
like a tie-in, yeah, for a Super Bowl. I think a Super Bowl like
Oh,
tie-in
that's
thing.
cool.
I don't know. It's I
Yeah.
don't remember.
that was kind of I think the beginning of like product placement.
Yeah, well, they'd give the show the product and they'd put it in the actor's
Yeah.
hand to promote it. Yeah,
We'll keep sending in the questions. We'll do more than one next time. How's that? We'll really
Oh,
get
super
in
fun.
there and
Great idea.
yeah, we'll have time for more next
we'll
time.
make time. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we were pretty good at maybe keeping this to a Melrose minute instead of a Melrose half hour today.
Yeah.
Which I think
It
that's
was a little
good.
more than a minute.
Look at us trying to follow the rules.
damn rules.
But we'll figure it out.
But as always, thanks for tuning in to Still the Place. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't ever miss a Melrose Minute. We love you all, and we'll see you next time.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'm so sick of hearing men talk about women's basketball.
This is Lexi Brown,
And Mariah Rose.
and we've got a new podcast, Full Circle.
Every Wednesday, we're catching you up on what's going on in women's basketball.
We've got you with analysis, inside stories, and a little bit of tea.
Full Circle is an iHeart Women's Sports production in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. Listen to Full Circle on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Presented by Elf Beauty, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports.
Calling all Yellowstone fans.
Let's go to work.
Join Bobby Bones on the official Yellowstone podcast for exclusive cast interviews, behind-the-scenes insights, and a deep dive into the themes that have made Yellowstone a cultural phenomenon.
Our family legacy is this ranch.
And I'm a protector of my life.
Listen to the official Yellowstone podcast now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to My Legacy. I'm Martin Luther King III, and together with my wife, Andrea Waters King, and our dear friends Mark and Craig Kilberger, we explore the personal journeys that shape extraordinary lives.
Join us for heartfelt conversations with remarkable guests like David Oyelowo, Mel Robbins, Martin Sheen, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and Billy Porter.
Listen to My Legacy on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is My Legacy.
We all have a moment that splits us wide open. On my new podcast, Wide Open with Ashlyn Harris, I'll sit down with trailblazers from sports, music, fashion, entertainment, and politics to explore their toughest moments and the incredible comebacks that followed. Listen to Wide Open with Ashlyn Harris, an iHeart Women's Sports production on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Presented by Elf Beauty, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports.